And I'm actually going to remember to put this one up.
Are you? Or is it going to languish in obscurity like our anime fan sub Golden Age episode?
The one that's going to have stuff in it that is like a year old now?
We were talking about downloading fan subs in the early 2000s.
Good point. I guess it doesn't make much of a difference. It will be going up. I think, you know what? That's what I'm going to do tonight.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have all the time in the world right now. And by all the time, I mean several weeks. So
yes,
I'm going to make that happen.
Because your job has decided not to be a job.
Oh yeah, my job is weird. I don't think weird is the right word. I think I've been laid off more this year than I've actually been working, but whatever. That gives me more time to not serial kill.
Yeah.
Which is obviously exactly what I'm not doing. I mean, crap.
Shit. We're going to have to start this one over.
Yeah. All right, resyncing in 3, 2. So, we kind of had a plan, I guess, but we also, I don't know, we could... Facebook sucks. I know we've said this before. I think we have. We've talked about how Facebook sucks before on here, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, but I think it just completely sucks now, where everyone only talks about political things and nobody has fun with social media anymore.
Well, I mean, shitposting memes is a type of fun.
Yeah, but I think there's too many people that just take everything too seriously at this point, and it's like...
That's not Facebook's fault.
It's not Facebook's fault, actually, and... that's a good point, because the point I was going to make is that this isn't the place where you're actually going to make a change if you actually care about those things. I think some people have it in their head that if they go out there and they make their statements to the people that are on their feed list that they're doing something, but they're not actively either A, changing people's minds, or B, preventing the thing that they're worried about by sitting there on Facebook. And I used to like getting involved in the debates and everything about that, but it stopped being fun-spirited and, in the spirit of trying to reach a conclusion. And in the past 3 or 4 years, it's turned into nothing but people getting angry at each other. So I was just I'm out.
Yeah, Facebook is not for rational conversation at this point. That's what Minds and Gab are for.
Yeah, there's that, but there's also that, And I'm feeling pretty confident in this as time passes on, but you know how people used to joke about the internet being for porn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's...
They're not joking. You realize that,
right?
Yeah,
they're not joking, but I was joking because I know there's people out there like me that require a little bit more, a little bit more than just, straight up porn for things to be interesting. There has to be some discourse, something or other. But I realized that even I was wrong. That's not what the internet's for either. And I'm going to go ahead and put this out there.
Okay.
The internet is for one thing and one thing only. And that is the exchange, posting, and subsequent stealing of anime pics. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all it's there for.
I'm down with this.
Everybody on the internet that's got a Twitter account for they're working at Fox News or CNN, and they run their Twitter account on the side of doing their news programs as well, or people that are famous authors and are going on there and are talking about books and things like that. It's no, this is you guys, you're doing it all wrong. I don't care how many people are following you. I don't care how much money you're making off of Facebook. I don't care how much ad money you're giving to Facebook.
If you're not posting anime pictures, then you're not internet.
Yeah, if there's not some kind of meme about children dying from the promised Neverland in your feed, then you have failed as a Facebook something. Citizen? Can we call them citizens?
Facebookisms.
No, that's dumb. So yeah, that's it. That's what the internet was for. Back in the day, back when ARPA and DARPA were working on this crap, it was they might not have known it, but somewhere deep down, it was built into their brains. One of them had watched the old Toei Aladdin movie or something, and it was boiling in the back of their brain. This is what this is really for. one day people will be exchanging screenshots from all of these cartoons from Japan. Some of them will be memes. Some of them will be people's profile pictures. Some of them will be just stuff that people have taken it upon themselves to draw as fan art, and they'll post it, and like 500 people will steal it from them and post it somewhere else, and too bad, so sad, that's what the internet's for.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's the working theory, and you can read all about it in my new book, This Is Probably the Way the World Is, maybe, by me. My pen name is me.
I'm sure Amazon loves that.
Yeah, well, everyone thinks I'm from Maine now.
Do you capitalize the E?
Wouldn't you?
No, E's don't deserve to be capitalized.
They do if it's about me.
I don't know.
You can read all about it in my new book, Narcissism 101, by me.
I'm sure Amazon loves that.
Yes. I have really screwed up their algorithms, let me tell you.
All of your books are always in everyone's recommendations for themselves.
They're in my recommendations for myself.
Uh-huh.
And nowhere else. We got onto the subject of books, didn't we?
We did.
Is that a sign? Or are we...
Maybe it is.
Maybe it is. Because we can talk about a book.
Well, I just finished one.
What was the title of this book that you finished?
It was called The Good Guy. It was an ebook that I bought on Amazon.
I see. I'm going to go ahead and look this up real quick. Let's see. Oh, I found a great review for it, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah, I found a really great review for it. But we'll get to that. Yeah, are we doing foreshadowing wrong?
I think we're doing irony wrong.
Yeah, we're definitely doing irony wrong.
It's ironic.
All right, so I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to poke fun at this book a little bit. Like, it's going to be difficult to do, though.
It definitely has its good points. It's the first several chapters are action packed and kind of fun to read. The characters are kind of goofy and it kind of has a very unique voice. But then the final chapter happens and you're like, okay, so the first 6 chapters were 300 pages and the last chapter is 350 pages. What the hell?
It's quite an achievement.
It's not for certain definitions, for certain bad definitions of achievement. Yes,
it's like you have a game that you really love and you're a completionist, but there's like that one achievement on Xbox Live that you're just like, no, I'm not even doing that. No,
I am not collecting 4 sheriff stars and enough fake dolls to beat Raghu or Ragla. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and look at the elephant in the room. I mean, this book is clearly Twilight fan fiction. It's like, obviously
that's what the review says.
It's yes, the review does say that, and it's just the first chapter is like full of vampires and things running around, and it's
so each chapter is like one type of monster until the last chapter, which is just like what?
Some kind of weird smorgasbord of all sorts of things. But yeah, like the first chapter, there's these vampires and it's just this guy is going through this town that's been invaded by vampires, and he's just starts slaughtering them. It's I mean I can sort of see Twilight in that. I don't think there was any like kissy face in that particular chapter. It didn't get to any Twilight
really.
levels of weird supernatural monster romance or anything.
No, there was no romance whatsoever in that chapter. That's for sure. There was a series of jawbones.
There was a series of jawbones. That was
thrown at the feet of greater vampires to intimidate them.
yeah. That was actually one of the more interesting things about it. The way that the vampire hunter in this particular saga handled the vampires. Apparently, it's harder for them to bite if they don't have, lower jawbones.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. And it's funny too because it's like. You open it up thinking you've got this action superstar kind of thing going on in a book. And it's like, oh, this guy's going to fight vampires. And then what do? They throw you like into the perspective of this weakling little girl that's following him around. It's like some teenage girl that's just sitting in the vampire village and she's terrified and she's like, well, who's going to die next? And then this guy just shows up and slaughters vampires. And she's like, I'm going to follow him. Like, who in their right mind, first off? What kind of little girl is going to be like... Is it proper for me to call a teenager a little girl? I've been doing it my whole life, so who cares? So this teenage girl like watches him mutilate vampires, and then all of a sudden she's like, well, I guess I'll follow this guy. It's like,
well, it is the safest place to be.
I mean, I guess, but like
slaughtering the vampires.
Like that's a... I guess it would be safer, but like my first thought maybe would have been... he's kind of dangerous too.
Well, yeah, that's for sure.
But that's what she does.
But I mean, she maintains a fairly significant distance.
Yes, yeah, that's. I guess that would be important too. Yeah, she just starts following him, totally unarmed and everything. Like she doesn't even prepare, and then like as if that wasn't.
Well, because if she did, the story would come to a screeching halt.
Yes.
It is a bit of a contrivance. Let's not paper over that.
Yeah, that's there's not enough paper in the universe to paper over that one. Especially since so the whole time you're like hearing this voice, but they immediately tell you in the book. I keep saying they. It was written by one person, I hope. I mean, I could see where there might be some mental instability in the person who wrote it, but so she's following this guy and she's telling the story now. It's like he isn't even really telling anything. Like things are just happening around her and she's observing them. And she's a mute.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the running gag, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a running gag.
That's the joke,
but,
is that you have a mute protagonist that is telling the story to nobody and can't actually interact with any of the characters. I mean, it makes her a really good storyteller in the sense that she can't actually affect the story very much at all.
Yeah, she's
by design.
I mean, she's basically a narrator that's in the story, but like is also a part of the story, but still can't affect it much more than the narrator.
Well, she definitely can't argue with anyone.
Yeah, there were actually a couple of jokes in there about that.
Yeah, so she can't, so she has no. So this vampire hunter guy. His name is Ray. He, he's gonna go.
Ray Peril. I mean,
Ray
talk
Peril.
about a name, right? Like who would even come up with that? Ray Peril. It's like Billy Bob like, Danger.
Yeah. It's like something out of an Ayn Rand novel.
Yeah.
But like, no, but I mean. The fact of the matter is that she has no ability to change the course of any of the other characters because she can't argue with them. So that makes her detached in a very specific and appropriate way for a narrator.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it does work. It does work, but I mean, just the sheer ridiculousness of it is like it kind of has you thinking right away, like, what is even going on in this world?
Okay, so here's the thing, like. Ray himself is kind of indestructible, and so hearing his internal monologue would not be particularly interesting. It'd be like, I'm going to kill these vampires, now I'm going to go over here and kill these vampires, now I'm going to go over here and kill these vampires. Whereas, if you look at it from the outside...
You even gave him a southern accent, just saying.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, Jeff Foxworthy is right. When you hear a southern accent, you automatically want to deduct 50 IQ points from the person giving it. But having her from the outside, she's like, there must be some deep plan or design going on here, right? And it's like, not really, no. Good luck.
He's killing a lot of vampires. Yeah. I mean, they kind of wouldn't be able to tell the story directly from his perspective because, like you said, he's indestructible. So, I mean, he's and he's not really indestructible, but like the way he's presented is he always has the
effectively
upper hand.
indestructible.
Yeah, he's effectively a Deus Ex Machina. He shows up, and the bad
Yeah.
guys try to do things to him, and it's not usually working
it's
out
futile.
in their favor. Yeah, it's futile is probably a better word than the soft sell that I was giving it.
Yeah.
So she's got to follow him around and tell this story and just like hold him in awe and just be like, this guy is terrifying, but what else am I gonna do?
Well, she also has an interesting voice in the sense that like she has a lot of disbelief over the things that are happening. Whereas again, if we were hearing it from Ray's perspective, there wouldn't be any disbelief. It'd just be like, yeah, it would just be direct here, direct here, direct here.
Yeah, and we've already named him. You know, it's Ray Peril, but like she's got a name too, and then that's like another
Silence.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like another layer of things where it's like this whole mute thing just plays into it for no reason. Like the author must have really been, pushing for more gags or something. I can't gag. God. so like immediately in the story, she starts following this guy, and at some point they're fighting vampires, and he introduces himself as Ray Peril, and then this girl who's been following him this whole time, that he's been ignoring largely, he says, and this is Silence. And then she's just like, her internal monologue, she's just like, my name is Tammy Nitbar. But then she can't tell him that, so like, okay, well, Silence from now on. And this just keeps happening like over and over in the book. He just keeps like calling her Silence, and then like adding titles to her name and stuff. It gets really weird. I don't really understand what that was about, but as the book progresses, she just gets angrier and angrier about the fact that she can't actually tell anyone her real name, and
she doesn't really get angrier and angry about it.
She gets frustrated.
She gets frustrated, but it's always about the same level of intensity, except for one point where someone that she knows walks by and is like, "Hey, I know you," and then just walks by without saying her name at all.
Yeah, I got to admit, I can't shoot that one down. That was actually pretty funny. Yeah, but so this is like this girl trapped in this town with these vampires that have just covered the town in a fog where they can't reach the outside world, and they're basically enslaving and harvesting these people. It's very like dystopian Nightmare, but with vampires kind of thing, and
yeah,
it doesn't have long to really become the nightmare or to show the reader the nightmare either, because this guy shows up immediately, so he just starts trashing things right away.
Yeah.
And he goes into this bar where Silence is, and kills these vampires. She follows him. They
he kills. Doesn't he only kill one of the vampires and then he lets the other one live? Right?
Yeah. They make a big deal about letting this one live with a broken leg, and then it's like running from him with a broken leg, and
yeah.
It's like, go warn the others, I'm coming. It's like a tombstone thing or something. And so they like gradually she's following him and realizing that he's just shooting straight to one point in the village. He's just cutting right through vampires that come across them. The vampires they realize this guy has been killing them, and they're like, well, we got to hunt this guy down. And so they keep sending more and more vampires and more powerful vampires to kill him. And
so we don't see some of that.
Yeah, we don't see all of that.
Which there's not much sense in that because Silence is with him the whole time. So, like, hypothetically, she would have seen him take out these other vampires, but
yeah, I think
that's a little oversight.
I think the author was trying to be clever and set up jokes by having Tammy backtrack on events that happened so that you didn't know that they happened, but it set up for the next scene in the story. And
yeah, I mean that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, but it is kind of. Tammy Silence isn't the type of character that would actually set up jokes, and so it's a little weird there.
Yeah, it's a little weird that she was time jumping. She was giving us the quantum leap treatment.
Yeah.
But long as it progressed the story, I guess she did her job.
Well, I mean, it's funny. It just doesn't make a lot of sense from a narrative perspective.
Yeah, it's weird that was the route that the author went with. So she follows Ray through this swath of vampires, and they end up at this mansion where there's this Lord of the Vampires, and this is just like, I don't even know what the person that was doing this was thinking. If this was like some kind of like reverse SJW thing or something. But the Vampire Lord is a vampire girl, possibly a woman. I don't know. It was like, she looks young, but she's also older than...
The way the author described her, I thought he just really liked like Wendy's and wanted to put Wendy in his story.
Yeah, that's actually a lot.
But he made her a vampire lord for no compelling reason.
That is a lot of like what I was thinking was going on too. Just the description of, except the glasses. It was like why does a vampire have freckles in the first place? They don't go out in the sunlight.
Yeah.
So she's describing her with like freckles, and she's wearing big oval glasses and has red pigtails, and it's like some country bumpkin version of a vampire. And it's also like this teenage teeny bopper vampire, but it's the Lord of the Vampires, not the Lady of the Vampires, not the Mistress of the Dark, nothing like that. It's the Lord of the Vampires. And they actually do explain it later on, but it's just weird that you're reading it and they don't explain it for a while, so you're like, why is she being called the Lord of Vampires? But there's this weird Dragon Ball Z thing going on in the story too, right? Where he fights these bad guys, and after he has his fight with the Lord of the Vampires, he's been killing these vampires mercilessly, and then there's this one vampire he lets live. And the next thing you know, the second chapter comes along, and she comes running to find them, and now she's with them.
Yeah, she joins the party.
Yeah. What was her name again?
Urzgelda.
Urzgelda. Urzgelda has joined the party. Give me the little Suikoden music thingy.
I have tried to do that with my mouth before, and it does not work.
Yeah, it's one of the harder ones to do.
It is extremely hard. It's like in 64th time. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's also played with a sitar.
Yeah, and sitars have a really weird, reverb that you can't really reproduce with your mouth.
Yeah, you need like a revolving amplifier with a guitar to do it.
Yeah.
But they...
So the next chapter is why this is Twilight fanfiction, obviously.
Yeah, they went straight from vampires, and where did they go right after that?
Werewolves.
It's just like, really? Is that anyone does anymore? It's like vampires and werewolves. Vampires and werewolves. It's all we've got in our repertoire.
Werewolves and vampires. Vampires, werewolves, and vampires.
And I mean, then just wait till where it goes from there. Then you're like, okay, hang on. But so now you're in this chapter where it's like he's slowly raising the stakes, right?
Yeah.
And the werewolves are more dangerous than the vampires because they used to be the pets of the vampires, but they were always more powerful than the vampires in terms of like brute strength. And now they've taken over a village. And people are so terrified of the werewolves that they have actually like attacked and chased out any vampires that tried to come into the village. And the werewolves have decided that the world is theirs now, and they're done being pets for the vampires.
Right.
So here comes Ray Peril and Silence. Whatever titles he was adding after that, it was like Silence the Dread or something.
Well, he adds the dread because she gets turned into a vampire.
Yeah. And And now he's walking through this town with her, and there's like this confrontation with these people that are afraid of the werewolves, and he's just like, well, yeah, I'm just gonna do my thing, and he takes off, and Tammy is sitting in a motel in like an inn somewhere. And that's another thing. This whole thing is so anachronistic. It's like everything is presented as being this old world, like saloon-style towns and things.
At first, and then like things get technological, and then they get untechnological, and then they get technological, and then they get untechnological. I mean, it's very hodgepodge.
Yeah, it's a really weird world setting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just basically the author was like, oh yeah, this sounds fun, we'll do this.
Yeah.
Without any actual thought toward consistency.
Yeah, it was, and like, I mean, the major anachronism of the way that like some people were using guns and some people were like, using swords and magic and stuff.
Well, it has a very like comic bookish, cartoony kind of feel to it. So
Yeah, it definitely has that.
So I mean, it's you've got a guy who can rip the jawbones off of vampires without being infected with vampirism or whatever, and it's like, well, okay, so what does he use? Well, the answer is whatever he wants.
Pretty much, yeah.
Whatever's funniest at the time, basically.
Yeah, there's this real like anime nerd thing going on there, and I say this as an anime nerd, so take it from me. I'm just gonna.
I wasn't gonna go there, but yeah, you just went there.
I'm just gonna guess that I can cave dive inside the kind of mind that would produce something like this. As a bit
Only if you don't mind having abysses staring at you from all directions.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, if there's anyone that actually wants to read the book, I won't spoil everything that's in the book, but, the werewolf thing, it's kind of like everyone is building up these werewolves as being 10 times as strong as the vampires, and you need silver bullets to kill them, and, Ray Peril disappears for a while, and Tammy's hanging out at this inn, and she hears a knock at her door, and she's like, well, what the heck is going on? And they know she's a vampire. Like, she was introduced to the townspeople as a vampire.
Yeah.
And now she's worried that they're going to try and kill her or something.
Yeah.
Because Ray's not around, and the reason that they didn't chase her out to begin with was because of Ray.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's Erzgelda at the door, and she's like all beat up and nonsense, and she's there to warn them about the werewolves, and it's like, why? Why is the person
why
just
even
fought?
They're there to warn them about the thing that they're about to fight now?
Yeah, he literally, Ray Peril literally killed all of her vampires. Like he says that as
Except
he comes
for
to
one
the next
and
town.
her.
Yeah. He says that as he comes to the next town, he tells them, I killed all the vampires. You don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, they're gone.
And she, after being decimated in a fight and having her vampires wiped out, she comes running to warn them. It is insane. Like, what is going on in this story anymore? And then they try to explain it away, like, oh, well, vampires. The reason that vampires are always working in the shadows is because they're attracted to the power that humans have. Like something about like one of them things where it's like, humans are the ones that like farm the land and everything, and they actually do work that is producing things and so forth, and the vampires are just kind of like these cave creatures that latch on and they grow their aristocracies out of what humans have already built, and so they would always be in the shadows of kings and things like that, working behind the scenes, and they'd have deals worked out, whatever. Very long-winded and convoluted just to explain away the fact that now they have to make this character a good guy, if you can even call it that, because like the whole point is this guy that's going around killing all these monsters is just an angry villain, and he's angry because these monsters all showed up when he was going to try and be this big villain, and so now he's going to be the good guy instead. It's just, I mean, it's not that it's plot holes, it's just that it's weird how all of this is strung together, and in such, like, offhand ways, too.
Oh, yeah, it's completely slapdash.
Yeah, it really is like more like a comic book than reading a work of literature, that's for sure. But yeah, so, they go through the werewolves, basically, like they go through the vampires, and there's a couple of like cool action scenes that I won't.
I mean, that's kind of where the story shines, is that in each chapter there's always a couple of good action scenes. The only problem is that the author forgot to separate the final chapter into like 4 or 5 chapters, and so there's a few action scenes in the final chapter, but they're all like on page 248 of the chapter.
Yeah. And it's a huge battle, too, so it's like maybe you should have given this another 100 pages if you were going to drag it out this long.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of rushness in the final battle, but, it's kind of hard because it's kind of one of those battle royale things where all the characters that you've seen throughout the book all kind of get together and duke it out.
Yeah, it's one of them things where it's like it's good as a send-off, but, like the individual battles themselves may have been better.
Yeah, that's true.
I kind of don't want to really... I mean, I don't really want to crap on the book, because it did provide me a few chuckles, and I did like some of the action scenes. Like, I mean, you can go and look at the Amazon page, and, like, it's got 5-star ratings. All of them are 5-star, but there's only 2, so, take that for what you will. And then there's that review that we found that kind of prompted me to talk about this book in the first... It's a long book, too. It's like 800 pages.
Yeah, and half of it is the last chapter.
Yeah.
Might be a little more than half, actually. Like, I was reading it on my phone, right? And the Kindle app has like a time left in this chapter thing at the bottom of each screen. And so, like, I was going through, and I read pretty quickly, so it was like, oh, this chapter will take you 15 minutes. This chapter will take you 18 minutes. This chapter will take you 12 minutes. I get to the last chapter, and I swipe to it, and it's like 1 hour and 45 minutes left in this chapter. I'm like, what? I think the author just forgot how to do chapter changes. Like it was like he was writing it in like some scripting language, like LaTeX or something. And he's like, oh, how do I do new chapters? Is that /chapter? No, that does not. Maybe not. No, it's /section. I can't remember. Fuck it. I'll just put everything in one last chapter, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, there was something neurotic about the whole thing.
Neurotic is a kind word for it.
It's the kindest one I could think of at the time. I mean, when I say that I could, like, get into someone's head because they're an anime nerd, it's one thing. But going any deeper than that...
It's like some kind of absurd obsessive compulsive disorder is what it seems like to me. Like, it's like, oh, this chapter, it's gotta be long, I gotta have everything in the chapter, gotta have everything. It's just like some guy shaking. Like there's a reel-to-reel next to him, and it's like just playing like white noise, and he's just shaking and just like
he's had one too many cups of coffee, and he's like wigging out on Tourette's or something as he's writing it.
I need another monster. I need another monster. I need another monster.
Oh my god, I'm loving this. Yeah, so yeah, they get some. There was one action scene in particular in the werewolf chapter where it was like all these werewolves are supposed to be pack hunters. Like, that was the joke. They were pack hunters, and he somehow gets them to fight him one at a time.
Yeah,
and they don't even realize it. So things like that are what I mean when I say there are kind of some cool things in there.
Oh, I mean, there's definitely a lot of really cool action bits. It's just that, like, the interweaving parts of the story are like, it's like, okay, it fits, but wow, right?
Like they go from wandering the plains and, like, going to these little desert towns, and the next thing you know, they're in this giant city with skyscrapers, and they're being chased by robots.
Yeah,
like. We started at vampires and werewolves. Where do robots come in? And then the explanation is even crazier.
Yeah.
So, I guess moving on to the third chapter, where it's like...
Well, we don't want to spoil everything in this book and like, just go through it piece by piece.
Yeah, we don't want to do...
That would take hours.
It would.
And,
so we'll
it would discourage anyone from actually, like, reading it. And it is enjoyable, definitely.
There's a lot of funny dialogue in it.
Yeah, that's something the author is really good at, is putting together, like, funny banter.
Yeah, like the character
especially with, like, the little bits of snarky kind of sarcasm that a mute character has when everybody else is basically, like, putting the things that they think she would say into her mouth for her.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you want pizza, right? I hate pizza. Yeah, we'll get pizza.
That was about the sum of it. No, I did actually laugh out loud at some of the dialogue. If there's... that might be the strongest point. Like, the action sequences, some of them are pretty good, but maybe the dialogue is where it shines.
The action sequences are good in the sense that they go so over the top that you're like, wow. But, like, yeah, they can be a little short sometimes, and that's kind of what happens when you have... effectively an indestructible main character, is that the action sequences get relatively short and fairly predictable. I mean, like they're predictable in the sense that you know how things are going to end up, but you don't know how you're going to get there.
It seemed like the author probably had, because as the story went on, it was like he started out with these bigger action scenes, and you were wondering what's going on with this guy, and then you started to kind of get the idea that nothing's going to really beat this guy. So the action scenes kind of got shorter, and you started seeing a lot more of what was going on with Tammy and Erzgelda, and
Yeah.
because like now Tammy's being followed around by the vampire that ate her family, and
Yeah.
Erzgelda's just hanging out with her like they're chums.
Yeah, it's very weird dynamic there.
And she's she's going around like talking like they're automatically just friends and referring to her as her vampire sister and everything, and the whole time in Tammy's head she's just like, oh my god,
You killed my family.
so I mean, stuff like that made it worthwhile. I mean, the insanity of everything
definitely.
that's going on is like easy to get through with the way the characters were all interacting.
Yeah.
And the over the topness too. It's like, again, it's more comic book than literature. So everything is way over the top. I mean, we've already got like vampires, werewolves, and robots. In the third chapter, we won't go into detail like you said. We won't spoil everything, but he takes on human beings who are like this entire army. and it's a whole army, and this guy's going to go up against it. You're like, I know he's going to win because I've already seen him beat vampires and werewolves, but seriously, like, how many times in a row can you do this? And we know the answer because there's a chapter count.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, then there's like this... There's almost an intermission at one point where they've been fighting all these things, and then they come to this castle in this village where... there's like these little tidbits where people are acting weird, where it's like, oh yeah, there's a witch that lives up in that castle. We all hate her, but we love her. And you kind of just have to see it to see what's going on. But yeah, it's like, why is everyone okay with this person? And then you're like, and how is Ray going to kill this person? And
Right.
I don't know if I should spoil that one. It's not a big...
No, don't spoil it. It's fine.
I won't spoil that one. But like, what happens there is just like, you're expecting him to do what he's largely been doing, and something completely left field happens.
Yeah, very different.
I don't know. What else should we hit? I mean, should we...
I mean, I think we've kind of hit the high points. We've described it in kind of general terms. I think we've gone over it about as well as you should for something that you don't want to like spoil entirely.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone actually wants to read it.
Well, that's the point, though, right? I mean,
like it's one of them ones where it's like, I'm making fun of it, but I also don't want to turn people off from it because I might be being unfair to it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that if I wrote a story, I would not like to have some jackass be like, "Oh yeah, I read this story, and here's everything that happens in it in exquisite detail. Enjoy."
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
now I know what happened.
I'm pretty sure it's like an independent, self-published author because it's like you can't get it in paperback. It's only like digitally on Amazon. So
yeah, you'd have to print it yourself.
yeah, and but man, that last chapter, it's like it goes from being this barbaric murder fest of all these monsters, and then the last chapter like completely deviates from the main characters entirely almost, and it turns into this epic story about another character, and then it like starts to come full circle.
I think epic is a little bit gilding the lily. I mean, it was more like how many O's can we put into one page as terms of address.
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of
okay. So
I mean,
so
like
not like
that
epic,
got
but,
really
yeah, that got weird.
that
It was like the
bizarre.
whole tone of the story completely changed. Where this one and it was weirder because the character was like this girl who was a knight who was like looking at the world and how everyone was acting and how everyone was like this honorable kind of person and talking like in really subdued dialogue, and she's just like, why is everyone doing this? And she's like the center of attention in the city, so she's like, why is everyone always so nice to me and treating me so nice? And it's a really different tone change from what everything else was.
Yeah, and it goes on for long enough that you're like, did the author die and someone else completed the manuscript, or
it gets really like out of whack, and you're like, how can this possibly come back around to what was really going on? And it does, but like the whole time building up to you're like, what is even going on now? This doesn't fit anywhere else.
And like you're like, is this a hint that something is gonna? No, okay, not yet. Apparently, and you just go through and you're just like reading and reading, and you're like, oh maiden, oh how thou maiden thee thou
Thou thee though.
Thou thee the thy.
Like I felt like the author was doing it on purpose just to be funny.
I mean I assume that's what was happening.
I would hope so.
But like, wow.
It was just nonstop.
It got to the point where I was like, if I see someone address someone with the word "oh" one more time, I'm gonna put this book down because holy hell, I have reached like toxic levels of "oh" addressing in my brain at this point.
God, and like the quasi-lesbian relationship that the maiden had with the Sunchild, it was ridiculous. It was like they were being so nice to each other. You were just like, just kiss and get it over with. What's going on?
I didn't really see it that way. It was more like
maybe not, but I like
it was really like it was so sterile, like their interactions, that it was like two like robots interacting or something like that in a way that like looks like they like each other, but like you couldn't really. Yeah, there was no feeling in it.
There was some mystery to what was going on between the two of them, because like it seemed like they liked each other, like just as friends.
But the whole thing sounds so not. The whole tone of the chapter is so disingenuous that like you're like, okay, something's going on here, you know?
Yeah, like with all it got really dark at points where like the new main character, I guess we'll call her. God, I can't even remember her name. The new main character, she's taking all this abuse, and you're like, what is happening in this story now? Like, it's just this girl that's like getting beat up and like getting slapped by her friends. It's like, it's not only Twilight, but it's like dipping into 50 Shades of Grey or something.
Yeah. Clearly, the author had many influences.
Clearly. Twilight is definitely one of them, though. We know that because of this review.
Yeah, the review definitely says that it is Twilight fanfiction.
Right, so at the peril of did I just say peril? At the risk of,
as long as you didn't say "oh," it's okay.
Oh, story, where art thou?
Don't do it! Don't you fucking do it!
All right, so at the risk of not spoiling anything else, let's go ahead and look at this review that we found for this book while looking up stuff about it, because it looks like the book's been out for a while, but like nobody knows this book, so I guess it's not. We're probably doing it more favors than bad by bad mouthing it on a YouTube channel.
The author is some nobody rando that just this is his or her first work, so
yeah, just obviously some kind of like weird mix of a Twilight /
It has the first 2 chapters are vampires and werewolves. Clearly, it is Twilight.
Yeah, clearly. I don't know. I mean, I can kind of see where this person might have been influenced by a Douglas Adams or a Terry Pratchett, maybe, or a Piers Anthony, or.
I mean, there's like I said, the author was clearly influenced by had a lot of influences, but like, I don't know, Twilight doesn't really seem to be one of them.
Yeah, we're just kind of saying that because of what we.
The review is hilarious though, because it says that it's Twilight fanfiction, and if you actually read the book, you're like, this isn't. If this is Twilight fanfiction, this is way better than Twilight.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing. I mean, have you read Twilight? I've never read it.
I have not.
I guess
I know that in it there is. Well, I know that Twilight itself was supposed to be was written as fan fiction for something else by the person who wrote it, and it's basically just like a vampire werewolf romance, which sounds really stupid.
And just for the record, I've never read 50 Shades of Grey either.
I think that any person who has been like seeing American media in the last few years, it has almost certainly heard of 50 Shades of Grey and knows general idea of what its content is.
Yeah. Maybe I should read it.
I
mean,
hate to judge a book by its cover, but man, this is a shitty cover.
It couldn't possibly be as like overtly sexual as a modern American cartoon or anything. So
It could very well be.
I can't resist a jab at American cartoons. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive into this review.
Yeah, do you have a link or something?
Yes, I will copy this link here. And I don't know where Skype... Let's hope that Skype doesn't crash again because I send you something.
Well, I mean, if it does, then that's just the way things go.
If it does, keep recording, and we'll just reconnect right on the recording.
Yes.
That's how we do.
Unless it crashes Audacity.
That would be weird.
That would be incredible. Amazing,
Okay,
even.
sending link.
Got it. Boop. If it'll open. It's opening. There we go. All right. Onlinebookclub.org. Sounds legit.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that this person paid for this review, which is a disappointment at best.
Uh-huh.
Because I know these people, and so, like, it's not... The thing itself isn't a scam. There's just a major problem with it that, like, if you think about it for a while, like, if you've had experience with this sort of thing, it just hits you that, this can't possibly work. So, like, the idea behind online... I'm not even going to... Well, you already named them, but I won't name them again because I don't want to, like, crap on someone's business because... it doesn't look like the owner of this thing is actually, like, trying to do things in a shady way. There's not really any...
No, I mean, the review, I mean, it's one of those things where if you're a professional book reviewer, you either have to spend a lot of time reading or you have to try to do a good job of, like, skimming and writing the review from what you skimmed. And clearly there's some skimming going on.
Well, no, it's not even that. Like my point was that... So you send them... What you do is you send them your book, and you basically pay them a fee, and they give you an honest review, which would be an awesome service. I mean, everyone wants feedback on what their book is, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I don't want someone who's just going to give me a good review because I pay them. I want to send them money and to do their thing, and then they send me a...
I mean, I guess the problem is that I don't have, like, a histogram of what their ratings are like.
Well, no, that's not even the problem. The problem is the back end of how this works. So what they do is they pay people to come and read these books and give honest reviews of them.
Yeah.
So what happens is people that aren't really book reviewers sign up to make a quick buck, and the real person that this is for is that book reviewer that wants to make $5 or $10. Some of them, I guess, make up to 30 or something per book that they review. So like they have an incentive to just try and review as many books as possible to start, and also just to show up and, like, they have an incentive to say that they read books. And so if you look into, like, I read the FAQ for this place, and they actually send the authors emails saying, does this sound like this person actually read this book? So they try to police it. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with them, the people running this company at all. I think they're just trying to, do a good service by writers. But
well, I mean, it can be really hard for a new writer to get reviews for books.
Yeah. So, but, like, on the other end of it, you just have these people who are coming in, and there's like a reputation system where you can make more money if you do a lot of book reviews and if you are generally getting good feedback. But then, like, the people who aren't giving good feedback, are they leaving an honest review with a good rating, or are they just rating everything high so that they don't get any complaints? Like there's no way to really police that unless the authors, know what they're doing. And but anyway, this review itself, like, I've read this book and you've read this book, so when we found this review, it was like, how did this even happen? So let's go ahead and give it a read. So The good guy is the stunning story of a villain named Ray Peril. I like the use of the word stunning there. It's just like stunning story. Give me some context before using that word.
Like if you hit someone in the head with it, it being 800 pages long, you will be stunned.
Yeah, well, like a stunning story is like, when someone...
is one that is large enough that if you hit someone in the head with it, they become semi-conscious for a period of time.
We'll go with that. So the stunning
Yeah.
story of a villain named Ray Peril and his sisters, Tammy and Erzgelda. Now, they're not his sisters. Tammy starts following him, doesn't even know him, after he kills a couple vampires and leaves a bar. And then Erzgelda starts following them in the following chapter after he beats the crap out of her.
Yeah.
They're not related at all.
Well, do you think there's like a metaphorical thing going on here? Or is
Well,
like,
it's just the way
they
it's presented,
become-
because like I said earlier, Erzgelda did refer to Tammy as like her vampire sister at one point, and
Yeah.
I thought that maybe that's what was going on with this reviewer. But then, like later on in the review, there's something that makes me think maybe not. Like maybe they actually skimmed it and thought this was the case.
Yeah.
So written from the perspective of Tammy, Ray fights the world one species at a time. First, a community of werewolves is out to end. A community of werewolves is out to end Ray's life. Then werewolves. Okay, that's a typo. I think they meant vampires.
That's just a typo, yeah. That's just a typo.
That's an acceptable typo. I wouldn't hold that against anyone.
Yeah.
Then a different mix of interesting monsters determined to end the three siblings for a turn. So he's calling them siblings again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's a typo. I think it's like one of those things where like they became like I think, I mean, it could be like a metaphorical thing, right? Like three people that are companions that are going through this thing are kind of, sibling-esque, I guess, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
It could just be a basic misunderstanding by the reviewer too. Like that's also a possibility.
It could be. I mean, I could.
Because Erzgelda does call Tammy his sister a lot.
Yeah, and just as a side note, the part where it says a community of werewolves is out to end Ray's life, then werewolves, then a different mix of monsters. Like, because they got the vampire thing wrong, it makes it sound like there's really just only werewolves throughout the book. It's like, and a different mix of monsters, also known as werewolves.
Yes.
But yeah, filled
Filled with humor, lighthearted banter, and action, this science fiction novel does not disappoint. I don't see anything wrong with that. To help better serve the family, okay, that you're really laying it on hard there. Tammy becomes a bizarre hybrid animal vampire robot.
Oh yeah,
and
we
she
forgot to
struggles
mention that, didn't we?
What do you mean?
Her misfortune at in every chapter something happens where she gets added onto as being more and more of a monster herself.
Yeah, and that's part of the running gag, because she can't even complain about it.
Well, they all think she's happy with it at some points, I think, and just
No, I'm pretty sure they don't think she's happy about it, but like they do not, she does not complain. As she struggles to verbalize what she is feeling, well, that is kind of true. She does spend a lot of time like gesturing and like, no, I don't want this. No, make it stop.
And she keeps giving
doesn't
these weird
usually
like
work.
thumbs up to people when she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I want to agree with this person, but I can't talk, so you got it.
Thumbs up. Renamed Silence, the creature considers Ray her savior, all while he is inflicting chaos upon the universe.
Now hang on.
three
Several
siblings-
times in the book, she's like, I'm actually terrified of this guy.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, the character might be outwardly terrified, but, I mean, the fact that she continues to follow him despite all the crap that happens to her is
Yeah, that's
and she
pretty
does call
indicative.
him... It's complicated, but not that complicated.
Yeah.
I would agree with that sentence in general. The three siblings do not stay in one place for long, inviting destruction along their path to make the world a better place. This book is written from the perspective of the anti-heroes, and their ultimate struggle is intriguing.
Would you call that last struggle intriguing? Is that...
I would say so.
I mean, there was a lot going on. You definitely have to sit back and be like, they...
I don't know if he uses ultimate meaning final or like. I think that just is like. I don't know. That's kind of a weird sentence.
I mean, we're probably nitpicking it a bit too much at this point, but
Yeah,
but just some
yeah.
of the things,
There's no
like
reason to
having
nitpick it too
freshly read it and then going and finding this review just kind of made me laugh. So,
Yeah, sure.
I loved this book from start to finish and loved the writing style of the author. The narrative shifts between three main characters throughout the chapters, and the author does an amazing job making clear that these three characters have much different thinking processes. Do you think that's true? You think that's,
We never really get inside Ray's head, but he says enough that I think we understand that he's not even thinking about these things as the way that... Because, like, right, so Tammy and Erzgelda are both scared of the things that they're going up against, and Ray makes it clear that he is not. But Erzgelda clearly thinks about things very differently from Tammy, so I would give that a Tammy-esque thumbs up. That's right.
Okay, so I mean that made sense to me when I read it. It was, you know, it was one of the things where it's like, you know, the whole sibling thing is kind of weird, but, you know, this review isn't like just a trash review. It's like there's things about it that made sense.
Yeah.
So let's see. These three banded together out of necessity and became a superhero team of so. Yeah. Again, like a comic book, it kind of came off that.
Very
they
comic
actually
book-esque.
fight a Superman at one point, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I laughed out loud at some of the dialogue between Ray and his aggressors, and the action scenes were thrilling. You know, Ray didn't have a lot of dialogue, did he?
When Ray goes up against them, were they really aggressors?
That's a good point. I mean, it was pretty indisputable what was going to happen once they went up against him. It
Yes.
became a running gag of its own.
Yeah.
Let's see. I laughed out loud at some of the dialogue. Oh, I read that already. I especially enjoyed the
Yeah.
relationship between Erzgelda and Silence, who are very different characters and may love each other but don't necessarily like each other. I don't think he's using love in the love sense there.
Well, no, he's using it in the familial
Yeah.
kind of. I mean, there's a lot of weird subtext going on because Silence is now, you know, part vampire, and so she also feels the weird power attraction thing that Erzgelda is always talking about.
Yeah, and
So there's something going like there's definitely they definitely. I mean, I think this is a pretty good way to describe it, actually. Tammy/Silence is constantly aware that Erzgelda is like nuts and a killer and actually killed her family, or at least ordered her the deaths of her family. And Erzgelda, but at the same time, Erzgelda is nuts and she's not, what's the word? She's not shy about saying about showing how crazy she is at sometimes, but at the same time, they have this weird kind of like distant affection thing going on. Like it's weird, but it works, and I think that's I think the way that the reviewer described it here is a good way to describe it. Like they have a like a bond they have a strong bond, but that doesn't mean that they like each other, you know?
yeah, and like as much as I was making fun of everything earlier, Erzgelda was actually a really cool character, you know, in retrospect, and she had like, you know, she starts off as this vicious killer who's just going to, you know, take over and do things her way, and then she has this massive like moment of coming to terms with not being the threat that she thought she was, and she becomes like you start to see that like vampires are different in this story than they're represented in a lot of places. Like she's actually very paternal towards Silence, even though she keeps talking like she's a sister. She's like watching over her and teaching her. And later on, there's another character that she kind of acts the same way with. But yeah, the relationships in this story are some of the most interesting things. Like all the characters have a different way of interacting with the other characters, which is to the credit of this author that I have largely been lambasting about his choice of location and everything. I mean, I might not have... I finished the book, so it's like... Yeah, there were interesting things that I just had to read and didn't want to put down at points. But it was definitely like weird interactions between every character. I mean, there's no sex in the book, but there's a lot of like jokes about sex and a lot of like situations where the characters are like clearly talking about one thing or clearly like there's a succubus in the story, and she's basically there to set up these jokes that like just barely graze sexual connotations at some times, and at other times it's just like, well, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a succubus.
Yeah, that's my job. Let's see. This book appears to be professionally edited with no grammatical errors and typos that I noticed. I mean, there were a few typos here and there.
I saw a few typos.
Nothing too bad. Nothing too
I mean,
bad.
for an independent, self-published book, I would definitely say it's above the norm.
Yeah. It's a substantial read, being over 800 pages in length, and not for the lighthearted. You know what I'm thinking about, actually, as I'm reading this review again? I'm wondering if the author of the review is a non-English first language person.
You know, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell nowadays. I mean, the punctuation...
Because they're using words in places where they don't really make sense. Like, oh, their ultimate struggle is intriguing. Well, that's kind of a weird way to put that. And then they say that the book is long and not for the lighthearted, but that's not what that means either. Right?
Yeah, but it's also the way that someone might write if they aren't used to writing a book review, and they want to sound like they're, they're used to it, so they're using these words they think will make it sound that way. I mean, that's everyone when they're doing their first couple of like reviews or writings about things.
Nah, that's fair enough.
I mean, it's.
Let's
not rag on the reviewer.
I'm not trying to rag. I'm just trying to explain why things are reading a little different than the way that you might think they would. Yeah. Right? Like if this is a person who English is not their first language, then they might have misunderstood a few things based on the way it was written and the fact that English isn't their first language, and that is not something to their demerit. That's just a fact, and doesn't have anything to do with them being good or bad. It's just, this is a quirk that this particular reviewer has that you need to be aware of. Anyway,
so yeah.
I had trouble putting this book down as the writing flows so well and the storyline is so interesting. The opening scene of the small town bar and Ray coming in to get rid of the vampire problem had me hooked right away.
How did you feel about that? Like, did that scene hook you into it right away?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the first few pages of the book do a really good job of first convincing you that the vampires are a threat, and then convincing you that they're not. And
I guess you're right.
And so that kind of works in a quirky way where you're like, oh, okay, so this is these people are being are in abject terror of these things, and then here's this guy and he's just like going through them like tissue paper. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I could see that if you were looking for like a very serious, solemn kind of story, that this might be a turnoff. But if you're willing to like kind of accept the fact that it's kind of like a comic book in novel form ish, kind of like a light novel kind of thing going on, then I mean, I could see that it works pretty well.
A light novel, but at 800 pages, weighing in at 23 pounds.
Well, you have to remember that most light novels are like series of like 18 books. So
that
like,
is true.
Yeah, I mean, if you put all of the, if you take your favorite light novel series and you put all of them together, you get a stack that is a foot thick.
And there's still that last chapter too. It seems like the author just kind of lost his mind at that point and just kept going.
There was something going on there. I'm not exactly sure.
So, some kind of madness overtook him. I give the good guy.
Is it like something out of Dwarf Fortress?
Yeah. I was just watching that on YouTube the other day. Boat Murdered is one of my favorite stories of all time, and it's just like a collection of people that were playing a game and writing what happened.
Yeah, it's it's funny. I love that stuff so much. Been a while since I've read it, actually.
And there's a couple people that like did readings of it on YouTube. They aren't as good as sitting and reading it yourself, because you just get the voices in your own head seem to tackle it a lot better than people who try to read it on YouTube. But they still get the point across.
Sure. I mean, it requires less attention to listen to something than to read it.
Yeah. So anyway. I give The Good Guy 4 out of 4 stars for its interesting storyline, intriguing characters, and vivid imagery. I recommend this book for any science fiction lover looking for their next big reading involving the supernatural. Are those things counterintuitive? I think there's more supernatural than sci-fi in this story. Well, there are robots, I mean.
Well, I mean, the thing about sci-fi is that any sufficiently advanced technology is equivalent to magic, right? That's a thing that people say all the time. And so, like, you know, the fact that the vampires are treated as, you know, the fact that there are vampires and stuff doesn't mean that it's not science fiction, because it's one of those blurry lines where like, you know, turns sword into ray gun and you go from a fantasy story to a science fiction story, right?
Yeah.
Or like the joke about writing military fiction, right? You how to write military fiction: write a story, then add a rank before everyone's name. Now you have military fiction. But yeah, the next line of the review is where it really is pretty funny.
This book could also be
Where,
characterized as Twilight fanfiction, with the multiple plot twists involving vampires and werewolves. While graphic, this book would be excellent for the teenager looking for their next fantasy novel. And there he's calling it a fantasy novel, so that's like 3 different genres.
I mean, it's a mix.
Yeah.
Like the story
is
kind of a mix.
I mean,
and that's something that authors are doing a lot these days, where they're like kind of mixing fantasy with science fiction. Like
is that happening a lot?
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
like
in pop culture, like Doctor Who is more science fantasy than science fiction. There's things like that.
No, I mean in written books. Like stories and short stories are mixing fantasy and science fiction a lot these days. Yeah, it's extremely common.
Yeah,
they're both basically. If you wanted to, you could combine them both into, you know, one term and just call it like supernatural fiction, right?
Yeah, you probably could. Sci-fi sounds better, in my opinion.
Well, I agree that it sounds better, but it's basically a question of what name you're going to call it that sounds
Yeah, no,
good,
I mean,
right?
I shouldn't even be questioning this, because my first book was a mix of space science fiction and, like, Lovecraftian supernatural horrors, so...
And the
Dirty Pair. Don't forget the Dirty Pair.
Well, the Dirty Pair, obviously. I was referring more to the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas drug trips.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's the review.
Yeah, I like the last sentence where it's like, while graphic, this book would be excellent. For, like, by graphic, they must mean the violence, because I already pointed out that
there's quite a bit of graphic
it's
violence.
not pornography.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Twilight fan fiction thing, it's just like this whole review goes by and this person's like, oh, I love it, it's great, it's like all this stuff is happening, and then it's just like out of nowhere. It's like, it could be characterized as Twilight fan fiction, and I read that, and that's when I decided to show it to you, because I was like, we both read this book, and the closest you can say it resembles Twilight fan fiction is that it has vampires
is that it contains
and werewolves.
vampires, werewolves, and plot twists.
Yeah, and plot twists, which you would assume that many books have plot twists. Not necessarily all, but many.
Maybe. Plot twist. No books have plot twists.
So yeah, that's the book, and that's someone's review of the book. And I don't know, is there anything else we have to say about it?
Well, there's another review of it, isn't there?
There's actually. Yeah, let's go to the Amazon page. This is like off the Amazon, not off the Amazon page. Let's look at the ones that are actually on Amazon. So I'll just, clickety-clack my way over there and get these pop-ups out of the way.
If I can actually find it, good God.
Yeah, I had to type it in, and let's see, The Good Guy. Yada yada. There it is. Okay, so. Let's see. Customer reviews. Okay, the first review. Over-the-top action... did you want to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Over-the-top action and adventure, larger-than-life characters, and wry humor. 5 stars. Take the average lawful good superhero and turn him on his head. The Good Guy is about an evil genius forced into a seemingly good role by the refusal of the rest of the evil in the world to bow to him. He plods a path from one den of iniquity to another, stomping on the recalcitrant bad guys and inadvertently saving lots of people in the process. With tons of over-the-top action and characters who seem indestructible, until the good guy gets to them. This book reads like a superhero pulp story gone thrillingly awry. But there's more to it than that. The sometimes goofy, sometimes serious, always colorful characters that populate the story add their opinions to the good guy's unstoppable rampage, and the author's wry, often dark, sometimes maniacal sense of humor reminds one of Terry Pratchett with a hint of rabies. If you're looking for a brooding anti-hero who doesn't really know what he wants, don't look here, but if you want a rip-roaring tale, take a look. So I would say that's a pretty gleaming and respectful review.
I mean, it gets the idea across. I don't know. I like the Terry Pratchett with a hint of rabies.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, that was actually.
That seems to describe it really well.
That was actually why I read the book when I read that part, because I'm a huge Pratchett fan.
Oh yeah, Pratchett's excellent.
Yeah, there was definitely some Terry Pratchett influence in the writer.
Yeah.
And then there's another review that says 5 stars, loved it, great book, look forward to the next one. Did it set itself up for a sequel, do you think?
I mean, it kind of does. It's maybe like a side sequel. It's one of those things where there could be a sequel, but it's also possible that it's just like leaves it to your imagination kind of thing.
Yeah, and there were a lot of characters in that book too. I mean,
that was kind of what it was. It was setting up. It was setting up it was world building to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, they just kept going from place to place, and the characters kept getting more outrageous and outlandish. And then, that's another weird thing too with that whole siblings and their sisters and everything. Like they call Ray he's talking about Ray like he's their sibling or something, right?
Yeah.
And Ray actually has relatives that show up in the story. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, it looks like those are the only reviews for it. So there's probably, it doesn't look like it's very high ranked on any list or anything. So it's just some independent author that wrote a book and threw it out there. I don't know what else, but I mean, what else can really be said about it? We've kind of ground this guy into the dirt at this point. The poor son of a gun.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have.
We could. I mean, towards the end there were a lot of things that were like. I mean, we read 3 reviews that were all 5 star and 4 out of 4, and so I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm the crazy one and just don't have good taste.
I have no idea.
Should we? How do you want to do this?
So we actually haven't been watching a Deceased Crab video this whole time. We were just saying random things.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I'm sorry, that's kind of an old Retsupre joke, but...
No, explain the joke first.
Oh, okay, so good God, where do I
Ghosts
start?
and Goblins, wasn't it?
No, it was one of those old Japanese MSX knockoff titles. It was one of those old Japanese games that is just basically you going around a castle and killing enemies, and it's really hard and labyrinthine. But it was a Let's Play by this guy named Deceased Crab, who kind of has very repetitive commentary. And so basically the Retsupre guys just made 10 minutes of comments as if they thought of what the things that they thought he might be saying, and pasted it onto one of his videos without watching the video, and it still worked.
Yeah, it was great, because I was watching that video, and I was like, every once in a while I was like, why did they say that? But for the most part, it seemed like what they were saying fit the video.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then at the very end of the video,
they reveal that they haven't been watching a video at all, and they're just making random commentary.
Yeah, it was
based on what every Deceased Crab video is.
It was absolutely hilarious. Like I was just dying laughing. I think I called you that day, and I was like, "Did you see this one? You saw this one, right?"
Yeah, something like that.
Oh,
it was years ago.
Absolutely brilliant. Which is why I found it so amusing that you brought that up, because I wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reveal at the end is the trick,
Yeah.
right? So why don't you do the honors?
Yeah, I wrote the book we've been talking about.
Yeah,
I-
and I wrote the review that had the Terry Pratchett with a hint of rabies.
Yeah, which is why I've surreptitiously been leaving the author name out of everything that was
Yes,
written.
exactly.
I really just wanted to make fun of my own book and make fun of myself a bit in the process and make sure everyone knows that I am insane. But
Yeah.
apart from that, why did we do this? I just kind of was like, let's roast my own book. And
Yeah, I mean, you came. So I was at a conference, wasn't I? And I was reading the book, and I told you I was reading more of it, and you were like, "Oh, we should do an episode where we just make fun of it." And I'm like, "I'm game. Let's do it." And then a few days later, you called me, and we talked for like 2.5 hours. And then at the end of us talking, I was like, "Weren't we gonna do a review of your book?" And you're like, "Oh, I completely forgot about that." I'm like, "You came up with the idea. You suggested it to me. I said, okay, let's do it on Sunday when I'm home." And you're like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And then Sunday rolls around, and you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm sitting there, I'm like, when's he going to say, let's do the review for the book? And you just never did.
and no, this worked out better than I could have possibly hoped, because like what I really wanted to do, and I think I started out strong on this, I wanted to like really drive it into the ground, really talk about it like man, this book is like it's kind of a disappointment, and it's like why is this guy wasting so much energy talking about a self-published book that some guy wrote?
Yeah.
And really make it out like I didn't really care about it that much, or maybe even just like I hate this book. But then, like, you started defending it halfway through, and I was like, okay, if I completely roast it the whole time through and then get to the end, then I have to defend my own book. So, like,
Yeah.
as you started defending it, I started, like, picking points where I could say, okay, yeah, I kind of did enjoy this. This was actually done pretty well, and which is great, because now going back, and now everyone has to think in their head, oh, this guy's a narcissist, too, so I'm like, yes.
Well, we had a narcissism 101 joke, didn't we?
We did. We opened with that. So now you know that I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Yes, I am a total narcissist, so make of that what you will. It's a self-insertion book.
Yeah, Justin is Tammy.
Yes. Actually, that's probably the character that I'm most like, either that or Ursgelda. I'm not actually a lot like Ray Peril, even though most of my friends seem to talk about me like I'm some unstoppable force of nature.
Unless you start to like something and then it goes
Yeah, everything
away.
I love disappears. Oh, by the way, cracked pepper wheat thins are next on the list, because I found those recently and I've been loving them, so like I expect to go into my local Meijer in a couple days.
I already called my broker. I'm shorting Nabisco.
Yeah, basically every snack food I love ends up disappearing at some point, so...
It's not just snack foods. It's like entire restaurants.
Yeah. I mean, it started innocently enough. It was like PB Crisp were the first one. They just disappeared. But that was like, nothing up until that point that I can really remember. But then, like,
Yeah.
Old Gold had these really good Parmesan herb pretzels. And
I can attest that they are very good, or were.
I was eating a bag a day, and I was, like, showing them to everyone I worked with. And then, like, they would come in with another bag of their own the next day. And I was like, man, these are really going to catch on. And then they just stopped making them. Like, a week later, they're just gone. And I'm like, they're going to make those again, right? And then they brought them back, but like in a longer stick format. So the way that they made them, they had like this buttery flavor, and the thicker ones they made, the butter absorbed into part of it, and it was much more flavorful. So the new ones just weren't as good, and they had those for like a month, and then they disappeared. And now like the closest thing that they have to these pretzels, they have garlic and Parmesan pretzel skins, or where it's just like the crispy outer pretzel part, just the baked pretzel part, and it kind of has that Parmesan-y flavor, but it's not very strong, and you just can't beat a full pretzel.
Oh, that's funny.
But yes, I wrote this book.
Yep. I guess we can call it there.
I guess we can. What was it? I couldn't think of a funnier way to just be like, yeah, I wrote this. This is what we've been making fun of the whole time. So
That's why I did the whole deceased crab thing.
yeah, that was brilliant.
That's the joke.jpg. And then
Well, you know me. I gotta feel like I'm king narcissist when it comes to this kind of thing. So I'm just going to assume I did
Well-
it all right because I'm a narcissist. So
I'm just going to assume that you failed.
yeah, well, I mean, that's your job is to bring me down to earth. It hasn't worked so far, but thanks for trying.
Yeah.
Hang on. Sales are plummeting for my book. They're somewhat shorting my book. I don't
How could
even
they
have a
plummet?
public offering.
They gave you an IPO
Just so
and then
they could
shorted you.
short me.
It's not a stock. It's a book. It can be reproduced infinitely. It's just paper. It's just words on a page.
Justin brought down the
You know what?
entire
Whatever.
S&P single-handedly.
Justin crashed Amazon. The end.